Hello. It's time to discuss philosophy again. I suppose an update is in order. My journey through life has taken many turns, but I pretty much haven't moved an inch. It's weird. You start out life so certain of its nature. As you progress through its seemingly endless scenes, you start to notice maybe that certainty wasn't so well founded. I'm not an old man, but I feel like an old man sitting in the corner, staring into the fireplace, wondering what the point of it all was. It almost feels like walking backwards at this point. The past and the future merge into a oneness which is unforgiving. Your talents, wealth, and ambition evaporate in the seeming pointlessness of your life once you reach the end. That's how I feel now, and I'm only in my 30s. At this point, I've pretty much asked all the questions I can get my hands on, and now I'm still left with a gnawing concern about the pointlessness of everything. Of course, a well-meaning religious person would pounce on this experience as a great opportunity to suck me into their hive mind, like a trapdoor spider ready to strike on a delicious insect, just trying to mind its own business. No. This is not the nature of my concern. I'm not looking for answers. I'm looking for coherence. The world is a vast, complicated, and boring place for me. It's lonely. Not so much because of what one might expect. I don't need attention. That is also pointless. I know the motivations of the human animal. I'm well aware of nefarious intent hiding behind smiling eyes. I don't need love. Love is deception. It is a label our social species uses to establish perpetual mandatory behaviors. I don't need affection. That need for affection died a number of years ago. Understanding the nature of things removes layers of psychological needs, one after the other. I'm as free from the burdens of the mind as any human can hope to be. I've asked the questions, I've explored the confusion, I've tested the postulates proposed by society and the unknown. The mandates imposed by these phenomena no longer apply to me. It's a good thing. But all things have consequences. Ignorance is bliss, but so is education. It's a different sort of pleasure to see the world and simply understand its nature. A blissful idiot may wake up among a pile of splayed-out bodies after the night's orgiastic debauchery and be immediately ready for another. He may continue this behavior for many years without any sort of consequence. But there are always consequences, though not always painful ones. Our blissful idiot finds himself half dead in the street after testing the laws of physics, and finding himself the loser, nature the victor, in his last act of free will. Welp, it was fun, he says as he breathes his last. Meanwhile, many miles away, an African warlord is stabbed 53 times for no apparent reason. Welp, it was fun, he says, as he breathes his last. Both these men had entirely different trajectories, but they both ended at the same finish line. What do they have to show for their respective journeys? Neither will even know how amazing their funerals were, who attended, or whether their bodies were dumped into some unmarked mass grave. In fact, they won't know anything at all. What happens next is unknown. Here I am, fully aware of this folly, and I must ask, what exactly was the point of all the trouble? These two men had a lifetime just like me. What's the point? You've no doubt heard of Plato's Allegory of the Cave. If not, I recommend you look it up. I'm going to give a little twist to the allegory. My question is, if the shadows and the cave and the outside world and the puppeteers all very effectively describe the true nature of reality, why does it feel unfinished? There's something unsatisfactory, like a bitter aftertaste left over from a delicious chocolate dessert. If you take such a story and fully apply it to your own self-awareness, where do you go now? The cave allegory gave you very simple and real goals and satisfactory answers to what you do and why you do it throughout your own life. The problem is the legitimacy of such goals and answers. Imagine you are playing a video game and are hit with a sudden case of complete amnesia starting from when you push the start button. You've forgotten everything that came before your gaming session. After the game is over, and you've successfully killed the king, or saved the princess, or built the city, or whatever, what now? At the end of the game, your goals and objectives abruptly vanish, and now, what? Go to school to become a successful wage slave? Congratulations, I guess? But again, your amnesia becomes a factor here. As far as you're concerned, all your memories were built on the expectation that those imaginary pixelated video game goals meant something. I suddenly realized they don't. That's great and everything. Congrats. Welcome to reality. But something is missing. Those imaginary goals were consequential. They meant something in the context of that imaginary world of the game. Now you're free. What do? There are no longer any defining rules to map out your path forward. What do? What creates the consequences to motivate you forward? Everything up to this point has been a complete lie. What do? Where do you go? It's a hard question one must answer for oneself, of course. After escaping the cave, seeing the sunlit world above. What now? There's an even deeper problem, however. Remember, as an old man, all the goals and struggles and consequences become inconsequential in the fading twilight of one's life. Is there a way to find satisfaction, even in the face of old age context? What model or framework or structure can one create to give satisfaction to one's life without any recognition of society's imaginary offerings? See, the world is as fake as the video game, if we see society, its ideals, and institutions as part of nature. It is not part of nature. It is imaginary, just like the video game. The shared value systems and personally internalized artificial success objectives create in us a false motivation, created by false assumptions and premises that almost always leave us dissatisfied if we, even once, open our eyes and realize they've lied concerning the nature of everything that matters. What does it mean to matter anyway? Without an external framework, we just have to make it up. This is pointless, and this brings us full circle. This is the point at which I realized I needed more to the story of Plato's Cave to give my own perspective a fullness of finality. These questions never really conclude, do they? I think back to the book of Ecclesiastes, from the Bible, where even King Solomon allegedly answered this problem by proclaiming the conclusion of the matter is to eat, drink, and be merry. This is a gift from God. See, Mr. Solomon gave up. He basically said, meh, I don't know, be happy, I guess. As an end in of itself? Yeah, that's good. It's whatever. Bring me a wench and a cold one. He gave up. Well, I don't have a wench, but I do have a cold one. His answer is clearly dissatisfying. See, he's a king. He has all one could want from the perspective of his artificial success objectives derived from the shared value system of ancient Israel. How would an introspective peasant or servant answer the question? They would probably say the goal of life is to improve their lot in it. The peasant would probably say, if I were a rich man, I wouldn't have to work hard. See, the circumstances would define each man's conclusion of the matter. In each case, one considers one's circumstance and defines life in terms of those given circumstances. Solomon had nothing to improve, so he had no objectives to feel that, if some given goal were accomplished, now he'd be satisfied. The poor man had objectives and therefore felt a certain motivation from that. The poor man probably felt more satisfaction than the king in that context. This is a universal problem if we open our eyes to the frivolity of everything. Everything is fake. Everything is a carrot and a stick that becomes irrelevant once death happens. Yay, I got the carrot! I can die now! Yay, I escaped the stick! I can die now! Wait. That was dumb and pointless. You see the problem. If you're chasing the carrot, fully aware of the pointlessness of achieving the goal, will you keep running? So there I was, staring at the wall again, thinking this problem through, not getting anywhere. Suddenly, a story came to mind. I call it the Allegory of the Train. I wake up on a train. I'm in a small bunk bed in the corner. The steel walls are cool to the touch. I lay there for a bit and yawn. Looking around, I see 20 people or so, all engaged in some fervent activity. In the middle of the car is a lamp-lit table. Seated and standing around are a number of people, all discussing something. They were all talking over each other as if in some friendly but heated group argument, like what to have for dinner. Listening closely, I could hear the discussion.
The paper's there to protect us from the deadly rays. We will all go blind, of course.
No, an older man, quite refined in his clean but well-worn flannel jacket, said in earnest. My great-grandpap was very clear about this 20 years ago. Rest his soul. The paper keeps us from freezing to death. The conversation continued. I had no interest in getting out of bed just yet. Looking around, the car was sparsely lit. Beds lined the walls about halfway, and an open common area with various housekeeping utility stations like a bathroom and kitchenette were variously occupied by the car's residents. Some children were wrestling in the corner while a couple younger women were giggling and darting their eyes toward a middle-aged man across the room. Everything was friendly and cordial and peaceful and lively. Nobody seemed distressed or concerned about anything. How did I get here and where am I going? I thought to myself. I stretched and sat up. Suddenly something smacked me in the face, hard, but not painful. I looked up smartly, and a young boy ran up and grabbed at the ball which assaulted me.
Sorry, mister,
he said, and ran off. I stood up and made my way to the table to ask about the nature of this situation. Hello, hi, excuse me, can you tell me where we're going? I was informed that such questions shouldn't be asked. But how do you know when you will be at your destination? For some reason, the men appeared visibly irritated.
Look here, son. We have been here for many generations. This is our home. Ain't nobody need to be picking apart our home, you hear me? Be happy with what you got, see? Go talk to Miss Wilson over there. She's mighty friendly, and I'm sure she'll give you a good company if you ask nicely. Now move on, and stop confusing us good folk.
I thanked the man for his answer and apologized for any concerns I'd caused.
It's all right, son. Just leave us be with all that silly talk. We'll see you for supper. Go make yourself at home.
They've done this before, I thought. It occurred to me that maybe people just show up here out of nowhere and just kind of stay here. On the walls were what appeared to be windows covered in a thick paper. I guess that's what's keeping them alive, I thought, a little sarcastically. I didn't stop to talk to the girl they directed me to. There was a door at the end of the car that seemed like an exit. I walked over to investigate. A different girl, about my age, homely in appearance, was standing near it. Hello, miss.
Constance, it's nice to see you for sure.
Constance, hello. Can you tell me, is this an exit door?
Why, it certainly is. But I wouldn't go in there. Nobody ever comes back. I'm pretty sure they all dead. You better stay here. We'd love to make your acquaintance for sure.
I looked back at the door. It was unguarded, and nobody seemed concerned about it. Just kind of ignored it. Do most people leave?
No, for sure. But when they do, they certainly never come back. I think the cold gets 'em. Grandpap says the paper is holding out lots of deadly things.
I glanced at the windows. She must be talking about the paper covering them, I thought. Well, I might as well have a look. Couldn't hurt, right?
Well, now, it could for sure. See, there's no paper out there. You could die, and I think that's a bad thing.
Her face didn't match her words, like she was making a joke, but wasn't. I'll just take a look. Can I come back if I don't die?
You know, I'm not really sure. But if you don't die, you probably should come back here for sure, I think. But I don't know.
I walked up to the steel door. Painted an off-white color, there was a large wheel that activated locks all around it, like one of those heavy doors on a Navy ship. Hesitantly, I gripped the wheel and gave it a turn. The lock smoothly disengaged and the door easily moved out on its hinges. There was nothing I could see through the door, like a dark passageway. I looked back at Constance, who seemed a little amused and curious what I would do next. I may be back, I said as I took a step through the opening.
Okay, but I'm closing it behind you. It's the law, you know. Let me know if you don't die for sure.
And with that, the door gently closed and latched behind me. It wasn't cold, but it was dark. It felt like a very small space. In fact, it was a connecting tunnel to another car. That makes sense. It is a train after all, I thought. I groped around until I found the wheel to the next door, and turned it. Opening it up led to a very similar car as the last one. Suddenly, hands reached out and violently dragged me through the opening.
It's another one!
I heard before a cloth bag was shoved over my head. My hands were held tightly behind my back, and many nervous voices were coming at me from all directions. Questions and accusations were being thrown around, but it didn't appear any of them were toward me. I found myself shoved into a seat. All the voices stopped abruptly, and a gruff voice took over.
It is a good day. An outsider has given us hope. An extra ration of ale for the men.
I was starting to gather this was not a good thing.
Boy, are you from the faction or a simple traveler? Speak up, boy.
I would find it easier to speak if you took the bag off my head.
Where are you from, boy? Don't play games with me. You'll find I'm a reasonable man. Where are you from, boy? Are you with the faction?
I don't know what the faction is. I just left the next car. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Well now, one more question. You are a traveler, boy, yes sir? A traveler. Just one question. Will you leave today, or will you take sup with us tonight? Speak up, boy.
I was starting to get annoyed. Look, I don't know anything. I just showed up today, and I'm trying to figure out where this train is going. The whole place went deathly silent. About 30 seconds went by, and behind me, someone said, "He's one of them!" The bag was ripped off my head, and I finally got a look at my captors. It was a large group, making the car feel much smaller than the last one. The gruff man was about 6 feet tall, and had a large build much like an old farmhand who's been in the sun too long. He even had the worn-out overalls to match. The place looked old and dirty, like a barn that needed cleaning.
Look here, boy. If you really are with the faction, I'll bury you myself. Are you a traveler, ain't you?
Sir, please, what's the faction?
Ha! He don't know what the faction is.
About half the people started laughing quietly to themselves.
Boy, you listen good. The faction is a group of bad people. They have the pox under their clothes. They drink blood at night and eat the bodies in the day. They's a cursed lot, they is. If you see 'em, you run back here straight away, you hear?
I nodded dutifully.
The faction smells like smoke all the time. They ain't people, son. They don't wear shoes. They cover themselves in cloth sacks. Some have claws on their hands. They all eat people. You run away if you want to live. You hear me, boy?
I nodded again. Sir, have you ever seen these people? They sound dangerous. How did you survive?
Seen 'em? Good God, no, boy. Nobody seen 'em and lived, I says. My great-great-grandpappy, he told me about 'em. His grandpappy told him about 'em. And his grandpappy before him.
Wait, so nobody here has seen them? How do you know they're still on the train?
Son, we know they is. We hear 'em at night, prowling around the outside. You see them windows? My great-great-grandpappy sealed them up with that paper. The paper is blessed, understand? It seals us into this holy ground. We survive because we believe. If we upset the paper, we'll surely die. Now, I think you're looking to scoot. You just remember, if you see what I says, you run back here, understand?
I nodded again. My hands were released and the crowd parted to let me pass to the next door. I gripped the wheel and looked back at the sad lot. They all looked nervous. I opened the door to another dark passage, and as soon as I passed the threshold, the door was slammed shut. What the fuck is going on? I thought. I won't bore you with every train car I passed through, since most of them were pretty unremarkable. Most resembled the first one, complete with weird superstitions about various horrors that awaited me on the outside world, and every one had some story about how important the paper was. Many hours had passed, and many train cars had been visited, and yet another door was in front of me. Again, I turned the wheel and passed out of the dark transfer hall. This car was different. It was empty. But most oddly of all, the windows were entirely open. I looked through the windows and saw a beautiful landscape of snow-covered mountains on the left. I could probably reach out and touch a tree branch or two as the train rolled on past if only the thick windows could open. The right side spread out to a huge flower-dotted meadow. I could see a small group of deer grazing about 100 feet away. What in the world are those people so afraid of, I thought. I rolled my eyes in annoyance at all the weird stories I'd been fed over the hours of traversing train cars. My attention turned to my immediate surroundings. It appeared to be a dining car with tables and padded benches. At the far end there was a speaker on the wall and a sliding cupboard door. I walked over to it and saw a sign next to the speaker. "Order food here," it said. "Water, please?" I said into the speaker. I heard a sliding sound and a muffled bang behind the door, which immediately slid open. There in a cup holder was a glass of plain water. I picked it up and drank it quickly. Holy damn, that was good. I suddenly realized I hadn't had a single drink since I started this ordeal. The cupboard door slid shut and another door below it slid open. A woman's British accent appeared through the speaker. "Please deposit your used utensils in the collection bin." I complied. The door slid shut and that sliding sound happened again. Well, that was painless, I thought, chuckling to myself. The car I was in was entirely bare, other than the benches and tables. No pictures or decorations. The slate gray floor was hard and cold. To my left was another exit door. Here we go again, I thought. This time there was no dark hallway. It opened into what looked like a large control room. Nobody was in it. There were blinking lights and dials and pressure gauges everywhere along the front side. The car wasn't large, about half the size of the others, and on the right was a large screen. Great, I thought. Maybe I'll get some information. Getting close to the screen, it appeared to be a top-down map of the tracks. It looked a lot like a snake that was eating itself, since the train remained centered and the track moved around relative to it. And that was it. Except for one more thing. There was a countdown timer in the top right corner. It was a big number. I turned around and there was a large poster on the wall behind me. On the poster was writing and a picture of what looked like a big black oval with a train headed toward it. It said, "To ensure a successful end, all safety procedures must be followed." I stared at the poster for what seemed like an hour. What could it mean? It suddenly hit me. That was what the countdown timer on the screen was counting down to. The train was going to go into some kind of hole and just end, I guess? There was no communications equipment and no windows in this room. I guess it's computer controlled, I thought. I stood there like an idiot, just taking it all in. There really wasn't much to do in here. So that's where we're going, just like that. Throughout my journey, I found it weird that nobody really cared to look for more information about what the hell was past the doors. They all seemed content to stay in their little cars. I suddenly felt very, very alone. I made my way back to the dining car and closed the door. "Coffee, black," I said bluntly into the little speaker. I picked up my cup. It was nice, hot, and mildly bitter. I sat down on the left side and stared out the window at the beautiful scenery whizzing past. Hours passed. The sun didn't appear to be there, just brightly lit ground and brightly lit sky. So this is it, basically. I just hang out till the clock goes to 0, I thought. This is really dumb. I didn't know why all this was a thing. But at least the view was nice. Oddly enough, I never felt hungry or tired. I didn't have to relieve myself either. I was entirely comfortable all the time. I did eat when I felt like it, but never really needed to. The days turned to months, and then turned to years. I occasionally backtracked and visited the people in the train, but nothing changed. Nobody asked questions. They just repeated themselves. It was like they weren't even conscious. Most of the time I sat staring at the scenery. It never really got old, honestly. But I kept wondering, what's the point of all this? I never did figure it out. One thing I was sure of, there really wasn't much to do. The train kept rolling and we kept on living. That's about it. Now, what was that story about? The lesson I drew from it was this. The train is time. We were born one day, we will die one day. That's about all we know. We are born, stuff happens, then we die. The end. That's life. But you notice you never have to get out and push. The train of time keeps on rolling. You can't make it go faster. You can't slow it down. All you can do is ride. In this context, these 3 parts remain: birth, the train ride, then death. Within this context, there is no scale to compare your actions to. Each of the car's passengers had trapped themselves in a tiny world, too afraid or disinterested to ask the question, where are we going and why? They were all very busy in their irrelevancy, and they thought that there was great significance to be had. The story's main character found out the answer, the true nature of reality. But in the end, it didn't really matter. What he did have was an accurate picture of reality. He could rest in that. He was able to go as far as he could go, and then settle, knowing he knew all he could know. His view of the world was as accurate as it could be in his very limited capability. He didn't have a false view like all the other passengers. He had as accurate a picture as he could have. This is where we find satisfaction in old age. Yes, it is true. All your efforts in life are pointless. Why is that? Because there are only 3 parts to life: a beginning, a middle, and an end. In that context, You can't determine the relative value of your successes or failures. Life is not something to aspire to or succeed at. It is simply something to ride on. Solomon missed a crucial factor in his analysis. He, like most all people, see the world through a very, very small lens. Within the boundaries of a society, there are scales of value, hierarchies to climb, resources to fight over, enemies to kill and enslave. The bounds of the human condition create a world within a thimble. Within that world, the inhabitants seek to master their own destinies, conquer, to be great. They don't comprehend just how silly they are because they can't see outside the walls enclosing them. But once you see the world outside, you realize there's not much out there either. Fact is, there's a fundamental aspect of nature we miss within our cozy little existence inside the train car. We want reality to reflect our mind's eye and society's ideals. The analogy is, thinking our lives have a point, or that in our lives we must achieve something or become somebody, is like getting out and pushing the train. It is a false idea we displace upon what is already there. Fact is, it doesn't matter if you succeed or fail or die early or live a long time. Nothing matters because the train was always going to stop anyway, and it always stops on time. In literature, we represent this idea of life being out of our control with stories of the three fates, ideas of manifest destiny, of the divine right of kings, and so forth. I think it is the acceptance of this fact which lets old men rest. No matter what they do, no matter what station or caste they occupy in life, no matter what great or mundane things they accomplish, at the end, they can finally see clearly. It was all just a train rolling in a circle, and it always stops on time. As for me, all I wanted was an accurate view of the world. It's no success story to uncover the truth. It's nothing to hang on your wall or win a trophy over. But it is satisfying for its own sake. Solomon was trying to understand how to achieve satisfaction. He was using the activities of life to gauge what was worth doing. The truth is, none of it ever could mean anything. Sure, it was always a chasing after the wind. The satisfaction comes from being correct and seeing the world from a proper perspective. Maybe you're chasing the wind, but imagine a god suddenly comes and says, "You will please me if you chase the wind." So you aren't actually satisfied with chasing the wind. You are satisfied with pleasing your God, and this external value scale makes the chase important to you. That's what you're really after. But that's not what you're doing. Truth is, it's about what's real, accepting it for what it is. Life starts, moves forward, and ends. Your mistakes can teach you. You can't really fail if nothing really matters. You can't really feel superior if nothing matters. You can't really hate if nothing really matters. The only way you can see life from this perspective is if you see it as it truly is. A train to ride on until it stops. Do stuff till it stops. That's about it. Yoda was wrong too when he said there is no try. There is indeed try. In fact, that's all you can actually do. To do or do not fails to include intention. However, there is no success or failure, no good or bad, no absolutes within the context of a society. There is no opinion. There is only physical characteristics. It is what it is, and that's all there ever was. To know this can give great satisfaction, knowing all the bullshit we humans fight about never mattered in the first place. See, that's the real point. It's not who has the biggest or most expensive thing. It's actually about knowing how to measure all things regardless of size. It's not who has the cleanest record. It's understanding that leaving a dead cat on your neighbor's porch means nothing in the context of birth, death, and a train ride. We measure life by trivialities. Our wants and needs define our very existence, but seeing life as it actually is, the emotional and psychological mandates on our actions become irrelevant to us. What is this need you have in light of the only thing that matters? What drives you in the context of a reality that nullifies it? A correct and accurate perspective can paint everything in life with the proper hue. So, bottom line, what really matters? Birth, death, and a train ride. Whatever happens is what it is. There is no scale, and there is no value without a scale. What matters? Without a value judgment, nothing can matter. Dying is easy when you know what's really going on. It's not the knowing. That's just the first step. Internalizing and becoming the truth is the hard part. My train ride isn't over yet, but I do know I'll be happy to see my station. Thanks for listening.